Royale High players are getting agitated because the scaling system isn't out yet, and we need to talk about it because there's a lot of actually really valid points that were brought up in this, comment section. And I do want to be clear, this isn't intent to hate on Royale High, but rather to express community concerns and just talk about what people are saying, because I think a scaling system in Royale High would be amazing, and I think it's something players have really anticipated for a long time. And I just hope that it will eventually come and we won't have to wait like years and years and years to get it, because I think it really has to do with inclusivity and body positivity and, making people feel included in the game. And I think that's something that is pretty fundamental to Roblox games, especially in 2025. So with that in mind, let's get straight into it. Again, anytime I record these videos, I use public comments posted on public forums. If you post something publicly, you should expect for it to be used publicly. It's free reign. However, out of, respect for people's privacy, I do go ahead and blur the usernames. So please keep that in mind. Do not find any of these people. Do not comment on their threads. It's not needed. So anyways, with that in mind, this person writes, scaling system when, and it's under the section rant. So keep in mind, they are allowed to share their opinion. That is 100% valid. I'm not villainizing them for that. So they have a picture of their avatar, which I think their OC is super cute. The new heels are really cute, but I'm so tired of Royale High trying to make us all short little beans. Dog. The Snow Swan heels and Got by extension, Goddess of Triumph set, are the perfect height and had the best body base. Think Goddess of Triumph gloves, longer and proportional arms, and all that got scrapped so that we can all be 5'2". No hate at all, the short divas out there, but they gotta hurry the scaling system business up because it's getting kind of crazy, which I have to say, this person's humor is actually pretty funny. And I like how they worded this very nicely. And I think that's something you don't typically see on social media. So props to them for being very polite with their opinions and putting out some valid criticism. This person responds, I only ever wear Snow Swan heels for this reason. All the other heels feel so out of proportion. This person, the OP, responds, it drives me insane. I hope and pray the scaling system lets us enjoy the new heels too. I agree. This person wrote a very, very, very long comment, which we're going to read. I swear so much of this game would be solved if they just took the time to figure out how to make a scaling system and implement it in their game. It doesn't even have to do anything crazy or every size imaginable, just a simple system that allows us to scale up or down the items. It would solve so much, including the masked players having to deal with the bodies that are identical to femme ones without change in size. It would bring back a part of the player base, likely because it makes the game more accessible and diverse. I agree. As well as inclusive, instead of neglecting half the player base and just full on not listening to other, maybe take into consideration what the players really want to see. Barbie treating this game as just her project to work on whatever she thinks she can improve, meanwhile the issues that are already in the game are being overlooked and treated as something that they'll just come later on. There are so many parts of this game that have gone entirely unfinished while still preparing seasonal updates, holiday updates, etc. Meanwhile, the older things just get pushed further and further back for another time. Which I do want to talk on this because I think this is actually a very valid criticism. And I think there's a duality to this. On one hand, obviously, games need to produce consistent updates for player growth. I think that is a given. At the end of the day, you want to incentivize people to play your game. You want to release exciting new updates. And to be fair, although the scaling system is an inherently wanted update, which I know I'm going to get flamed for this. Get ready. Royale High Twitter, you guys are listening because you're about to type something up. Get ready. Are you okay? Good? Okay. I firmly believe that the reason, in my opinion, that Royale High has not implemented a scaling system is because it will not inherently make them money. And that is something that Royale High Twitter community doesn't like me for saying. Sorry, in my opinion, it's the truth. And the reality behind it is that games, obviously, their intention is to make money. And I think it's naive to say, oh, like, they don't need money. They already have so much money. No, they need money because they have people to pay. And Royale High, they have a pretty decent support system. From what I've seen, their community manager on Twitter is phenomenal. And obviously, they have to pay these people for their work because unlike some other games, these people actually pay people for their work. Round of applause for Royale High. I love that. But regardless, it's naive to think that Royale High doesn't need to make money. And unfortunately, with a scaling system, that does take quite a bit of effort. I'm not saying it's easy, but it takes quite a bit of effort to code because you have to, create these adaptations for every single item in the game in order for it to work. And this, I understand, has been something that players have wanted for several years. However, I'm not naive to the fact that it is a lot of work. And I'm just trying to illustrate that. However, what is interesting to me is that Royale High continue to release seasonal updates, the mermaid shop, certain things like the mermaid tails, the new set that just came out, which is really cute, by the way. There's lots of stuff that Royale High has been, producing, and I think their intention with that is obviously to give players new content, but it's also fundamentally, in my opinion, to make money. Think about it. If they add a scaling system, sure, it will make players happy. Sure, players will join the game, but the amount of money you make from players playing your game versus players actively purchasing things in your game is very, very different. And I will, be honest here, I don't know the exact numbers behind it. However, I do understand from Roblox's payout system that the way Robux converts to USD or whatever currency you use compared to how much games get paid for players playing their game, it's very, very different, with the USD payouts being significantly more money than any money you get from players just sitting in your game. And, of course, all games want to make as much money as possible. I think that's, the capitalist landscape of Roblox itself. There's an incentivization for games to make content that's going to make them money. And I'm not going to demonize anybody for that. However, what I do think is slightly unfair is that while subsequently, releasing all these new items, Royale High has basically completely nerfed their farming system, which is something I've discussed in previous videos, and I've discussed how, that incentivizes players who then purchase stuff in the game, such as diamonds, other currency, etc., which then makes the game much more money. And unfortunately, I feel like the reasoning for not making a scaling system sooner is because it doesn't inherently make them money. If a scaling system is a feature in a game that everybody has access to, then nobody has incentivization to spend money on the game, which you could argue, oh, well, they'll play the game more, so they'll spend more money. Yeah, you could say that. But the truth is, if you give them the option between eating a free granola bar and having this giant cake with all these layers of icing and beautiful decorations, you say, hey, you can have this cake, or you can have this crushed up granola bar from the bottom of my lunch kit that's free. What do you want? They're probably going to pick the really beautiful big cake. And that's just, a given. I'm not going to demonize anybody for that. But, I think it's important to recognize that games want to make money. And at the fundamental core of it, Royale High is a business. And I know people don't like to think that, but that is the truth. They make money, they have a toy line, they hire people. And for a lot of people, they're their main source of income. And unfortunately, when that happens, games' priorities slightly shift. And although I do believe that Royale High has the best interest of the community at the fundamental core, I do believe that, there are certain pressures of having to pay people, having to keep things afloat, that encourage them to make paid content. And again, that's just the nature of Roblox. Now this person says, I'm 5 foot, they're making me taller. If anything, I'm done growing too, by the way. And this person says, same, I definitely think the short shoes are really messing up proportions and just look weird in general with some bodies, which I do agree. Some shoes just look kind of, I don't know, they look kind of funny. This person says the legs are so skinny that they don't even have to make a whole new model, just a slider to make them bigger. I agree. I don't think they're really skinny. To be honest, it just gives all the characters BBLs. This person says, I genuinely despise how short the arms are, which I'm gonna be honest, I saw that when they were like doing, there's one TikTok I was watching actually the other night in bed, and I was like, why do they have T-Rex arms? Like, what's wrong with their arms? And then I realized, oh, like that's like how these arms look in this set, which no hate to anybody with short arms, because I know people be like, oh my god guys, Poppy hates people with short arms. No, but I just think it looks so silly, like the proportion of them having such long torsos and their arms being like, oh, it just looks like a T-Rex. That's the only reason I want a scaling system. I wish they'd finish it up already or share any progress at all, which again, I think progress has been something we discuss a lot in this channel, and how communicating with your fan base really does help with community trust and, creating excitement for updates. And I understand that obviously they're prioritizing things that make them money, but I certainly think that the scaling system is long overdue and something that would really, really benefit the game, because not only does it make players feel heard, but it also promotes inclusivity, which is something that Royale High has been criticized for in the past. And I think this can show that they are actually serious about doing it, and that their statements about, oh, we're going to be more inclusive, wasn't just for show and for PR. This person says, this is the only complaint I have for the new shoes we've been getting. It's so cool to have different body shapes in this game, but there needs to be way more to tweak it without having to wear certain accessories, which I agree. Regardless, there's a lot more to this spread, and I don't want to get too much into it in this video. However, I want to know your guys' thoughts on this. What do you think about the new shoes? Do you think Royale High is taking too long in the scaling update? What do you think they can do to maybe make players feel more comfortable or have some more sense of trust with the update? Personally, I remember even when I played Royale High way back when, there was a lot of people who really, really, really wanted more inclusivity in the game. And with their whole launch of doing POC hairs for a little bit there, where they're doing new hairs every week and stuff like that, and really trying to, make the game more diverse, I thought that was a great step towards inclusivity and diversity. However, when you kind of stop doing that, and then you promise updates for a scaling system that just seems to kind of never come, I think it makes players feel upset, and rightfully so. As a player who plays Roblox, and especially someone who used to play Royale High, and still does from time to time, and especially kids as well, you want to see yourself in a game. You want to be able to relate to a game. You want to be able to have that personal connection to a game, and psychologically that makes you more connected to a game. It makes you want to spend more money in it. So really, if you think about it, it would actually make Royale High maybe more money if they consider speeding up this scaling system, because then more people will play the game, which inherently would mean more people will buy stuff. But it seems like right now they're kind of tunnel visioned on just selling more assets. So I don't know, I guess that's their goal right now. But regardless, let me know your thoughts on this. Are you anticipating the scaling system? What features do you hope can be scaled in the game? To which ways? And with that in mind, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!